Welcome back to my 3D anime character series. So far I've covered creating a reference, modelling the base body, hands, feet and head. In this video I'm going to cover how to create the eyes by utilising some optical illusions so we can obtain that cel-shaded anime look. So without any more delays, let's get stuck in. This footage is from halfway through the face modelling process. I'm selecting this section so I can hide the back of the head. By hitting H, I hide the current selection, making it much easier to link select the rest of the head with the L key. When using this selection method, a useful menu shows up in the bottom left. For now, I'm leaving this on normal, but this is incredibly useful when dealing with UV mapping and texturing, which I'll be covering in the next video. First of all, I'm going to construct the white area of the eye. To do this, I select the edge loop around the eye with Alt left click and hit E to extrude, pulling the faces in. Now by hitting S, I scale these edges out. We're essentially creating an eye socket here. However, unlike traditional models, this socket will actually serve as the basis for the eye itself. I extrude out a couple of times, and then with the final loop selected, I toggle auto merge on by clicking this little button at the top right and hit S and 0 to scale and merge them together into a single point. And this is pretty much it for this part. You could probably even dissolve this edge I have selected here. The important part is to have the ridge that extends further out than the actual eyelids. So next, let's move on to constructing the iris. In object mode, I click add at the top and select a circle. In the bottom left, make sure the fill type is set to triangle fan. The number of vertices depends on how detailed you want it to be. I just leave it at 32. You can also adjust the radius here, but I will be scaling it down anyway. You're best off having this object's origin set to 0 on the X, Y and Z axis, and adjust its position in edit mode instead. This makes it easier to apply the mirror modifier. For me, I apply the mirror on the X axis. In edit mode, from the side view, rotate it 90 degrees with the R key and scale it down with S. This part is essentially going to represent the pupil, so I scale it to match the front view. It's important to keep this disc flat along the horizontal axis, so it is easier to construct the shape. Next is to select the outer edge and scale outward. When scaling, you can press X, Y or Z for whatever axis you're working with to limit the scale to that specific one. For me, my horizontal axis is X, so I press S and then X to create this oval shape. By hitting Ctrl R, I add an edge loop and slide it by moving the mouse to create this outlining edge of faces. From the side view, I pull the outer edge back on the Y axis to create this chamfer. This will help establish the outline for the iris for both front and side views. Now by selecting the central vertex and hitting O, I can grab and hold the Y axis handle. If you cannot see this handle, it's probably because you haven't got it selected on the left hand side here. By scrolling the mouse wheel up and down, this grey circle of influence can be adjusted. The general idea is to pull the centre of the iris inward, creating a slight indentation. When you're happy with the shape, press A to select everything and then 7 on the numpad to align the view to the top-down perspective. Switch to wire mode by pressing the button at the top right and rotate the iris to align with the eye socket. You can try and adjust your shape to fit whatever style you're going for or to match your guide, but generally I like to retain this shape and ignore my drawing. With our iris done, it's just a case of adding one last detail. I added another filled circle. This time I set it to 8 faces. You may want to set it to 12 or 16 for a smoother shape though. This disc is going to represent the reflective white spot on the eye. Once again, it's a case of rotating and scaling them, just like the iris, and putting them into place. In my case, I rotated it before adjusting the shape. If you did what I did and didn't adjust the shape before rotating, you can adjust the orientation mode at the top and set it to normal. This will align the Z axis to the face direction, so you can pull the central vert out like so. For any other spots of light, you can now select the existing one with L and press Shift D to duplicate. Before I move on to the lashes, there is one more detail we need to add. Here I have created a plane and I'm placing it inside our eye socket. This is going to represent the dark shading inside the white of the eye. At first, I'm just making a simple shape of 2 quads like so, as I'm going to apply subdivision surface to make it a little easier to shape. By selecting the bottom edges, I'm going to slide this mean crease setting up to 100% and do the same for the sides. Toggle on X-ray and then it's just a case of moving these verts and getting the appropriate shape. Slowly adding more geometry by adding loop cuts with Ctrl R. The trick is to make it follow the dark shading line of the white of the eye, so it takes some tweaking to ensure it isn't poking through the facial mesh or iris while covering the back of the socket. I'm not going to go into super depth for the eyelash as it really depends on your style, but for mine I've created this triangulated tube with a point on the end. Just like the eye shading, I have a subdivision modifier and I've applied some creases to retain the shape. You'll see when I select the edge here and adjust the crease, it'll pull this out into a point. I'm essentially aligning this around the edge of the eye, extruding it out a bit at a time. I'll speed up the footage slightly so you can see how it shapes up. This marks the basic shape. For some this may be all you need, but for my shape, I have a few spiky areas. To create these, I basically extrude out a face like so, and merge the verts by hitting M and selecting center. For these spikes, I use the knife tool by hitting K to cut around this vert and extrude up. Doing so creates 5-sided faces, so it is a case of using the knife tool to eliminate them. Honestly, because this is going to be cel shaded, you can get away with utilising triangles a lot here, so don't worry too much about that. I'll speed up the footage again so you can see the full process, then we'll talk a bit about texturing. In the next video, I'll be covering a few UV techniques. This will also include setting up some shading and an outline for the face in general. So I'll only give a brief outline for the eye setup for those familiar with UV unwrapping and texturing, so you can see how I approach this. If you're new to this, I'll be covering this in more depth in the next video. I've created a symmetrical setup here with my UVs before applying the mirror modifier, so I could simply flip them over after they were all set up. For the eyelashes, I've had to split the front and back into separate islands. The actual texture is a simple dark brown gradient. Some of the lashes had to be split into separate locations and placed in a way that hides the seam in the texture. This bluish area is for the eyeshadow plane, and this area is for the white socket, with the spots of light besides it. These sections are just painted in a block colour, as we don't really need any texture to them. This also means they can be quite small on our texture sheet. The iris occupies the majority of the space because it requires more detail compared to the other areas. The size disparity is fine because we work with block colours and cel shading. As for the actual texturing of the eye, you'll see that the chamfered edge is blocked out in a dark colour for the outline, while the inside consists of 3 circles of light, medium and dark tones with a light and dark gradient at the top and bottom. This is the most prominent feature of the face, so I suggest spending some time looking into how to draw and colour eyes and work out what best works for you and your character. But really that's about it for this video. Next I'll cover UV unwrapping, texturing and some basic shading. So if you want to see where this goes, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you get a notification. If you enjoyed the video, need some help or have some additional tips, please leave a comment and make sure to hit the like button while you're down there. A special thanks to my patrons who support me over on my Patreon. Your service is very much appreciated. If you want to help support the channel as well, the link is in the description. And if you're curious how I constructed the face mesh, I recommend clicking here. But if you want to do none of that, would you kindly bugger off?
Maybe.